All right, thank you, Joe. Intel holding its annual meeting today, the first for Paul Otellini as CEO, and Becky is watching that story. Baxter.
Yeah, Paul Otellini is taking over today. He's only going to be the 5th CEO in the entire history of Intel, but he is going to be the first CEO who does not have an engineering background. That's something Wall Street's been talking about for some time. Joining us now on the phone to go over what this means for the company is Apjit Walia. He's an analyst at RBC Capital Markets. And Apjit, when you look at this, Otellini doesn't have that techie background that we've seen with every other CEO of Intel. What does that mean as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think Intel's progressing as a company. You know, they've been long-term. They've been known as a good engineering company. You know, very good at process technology, the leader in that. And I think the last few years, you're beginning to see a marketing campaign, especially the recent one they had, the Centrina campaign, which was really well done. And I think Paul Otellini was one of the major proponents of that campaign. And now we're seeing the company evolve not from primarily being a process technology company to also someone who really is going to look at major marketing strategic pushes. And I think that's why you're seeing a non-engineer, a marketing guru run the company now.
Otellini has a long time experience with this company, too. What's the take on his leadership?
Well, I mean, of course, he's done well with the different product groups and business groups he's run before, but I mean, it's very different when he started running a close to $20 billion company and then in a group itself. But of course, he's, internally he's really liked, and I think the street's warming up to him as well. I mean, the last couple of analyst days are beginning to be more and more open, and I think we'll see more of that going into the future.
You have a sector perform rating on shares of Intel. What would it take for you to really think that things are turning to the point where you'd upgrade the stock?
Sure. I mean, my rating is, of course, a long-term rating, and I believe long-term Intel has only one major issue. I mean, it's the growth rate. It's such a big company. The growth rate cannot be sustainable like the way it was in the 80s and 90s, and that's more reflective of my stance in the semiconductor sector as well. I mean, I'm bearish the sector. But I believe near-term, and I think since October, we've been a street high on Intel in terms of our estimates. We believe near-term is going to outperform. I believe long-term, until Intel goes out there and buys or actually, finds some way to enter the communications market, the wireless and the wireline communications markets. If you look at companies like Qualcomm, companies like Broadcom, Marvell, companies beyond the PC food chain, which are seeing a lot of growth. Intel has a lot of capacity coming online. I think it needs some companies like that to have their products with it. Until then, I think I still feel growth's limited. The multiple is probably doesn't have much upside. And I think the desktop market, which is obviously the biggest food chain of Intel's revenues, is slowing down. So I think it's a long-term rating more than a near-term reflection of my stance.
Apjit, as you said, this is a very large company dominated by the PC food chain. I mean, realistically, is there any way this company can ever diversify? I mean, they're not small enough to pull what Texas Instruments pulled, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can grow organically, or you can just go buy companies. I mean, there's 3 or 4 companies out there in the communication food chain which are great acquisitions. You've got Texas Instruments, you've got Qualcomm, you've got Marvell, Broadcom. You can go to the PLD food chain and look at companies like Xilinx and Altera. A lot of these companies are fabulous, and that's ideal for Intel to take them and put it in part of its portfolio because it's got a lot of good fab capacity online.
Apjit, very quickly, what headlines do you expect coming out of this meeting aside from Otellini being named CEO?
Well, I mean, of course, they're going to talk about long-term, the growth rates and how the company's diversifying, and they're going to talk about essentially what's going on near-term. I mean, near-term, the quarter looks very strong. We're at $9.3 billion for the quarter. I think most of the street's coming closer to our number, and I think we're going to see more of that going forward. I expect them to raise their guidance, the mid-quarter update, which is in June. So it's going to be, I believe, a lot of positive things are going to come out of the shareholder meeting. I don't think anything material is going to change today.
Okay. Apjit, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Apjit Walia of RBC Capital Markets.